It's not supposed to be like this. Until the current 9th console generation, video game hardware had a cyclical, predictable pattern. A new console came out at a semi-reasonable price, the early adopters jumped on it during the first year of sale, and over time, hardware prices would fall as console components became cheaper to make. Simultaneously, the game library naturally got bigger and better over the course of the generation, thus making that now more affordable system more appealing to more people, and therefore enabling console makers to sell the majority of hardware units in the back half of a console's life cycle. And then, a new, more powerful console would be released, and the cycle would begin anew. But no longer. Whether you want to blame political policy, the insatiable hunger of tech companies to push AI into our lives, thus necessitating one resource-hungry data center after another, pure greed by capitalist companies that make our gaming devices, or some combination of the three, we now face a new grim reality. Gaming is no longer affordable, and instead of getting less expensive in the second half of the PS5 and Xbox Series X generation, it is instead getting even pricier.
I mean, it's one banana, Michael. What could it cost? $10?
The downstream effect of this is a threat to the entire industry and the entire medium that we all love so dearly, because the simple fact of the matter is, if gaming never gets any cheaper, and instead only ever gets more expensive, then there may not be a next generation of gamers able to get into the hobby. And with no next generation of players, the tent won't grow and carry the industry forward. Think about it this way. For many families, a kid asking their parents for a $600 console at any time of year, be it a birthday, holiday, or anything else, is a non-starter compared to a $300 or $400 machine. But we could perhaps even excuse that in the past because the answer would just be wait for the price to drop. Except, as we've been seeing this generation, that isn't happening. How did we get here?
So how did we end up here?
Well, we just came from the,
Well, Microsoft hit gamers with 2 Xbox price increases last year, resulting in starting prices of $400 for the more affordable Xbox Series X and $600 for the Blu-ray driveless Series X. The $500 launch Series X with an optical drive now runs $650. Sony, meanwhile, has raised hardware prices twice as well. Once last year, and it's doing so again right now. The net result is that the PS5 starts at $600 again for the all-digital model. To get one with a Blu-ray drive that cost $500 at launch now rings up at $650, and now tops out at an eye-watering $900 for the more powerful PS5 Pro.
Because the rent is too damn high.
Nintendo is part of the problem here too. Remember last year when the company pushed back pre-orders of the just announced Switch 2? We may never know if the Switch successor's price went up during that deliberation, but we do know that the console we got is $450. And by the way, I looked it up with an inflation calculator. The Switch 1's $300 launch price from 2017 equates to $400 in today's money, not $450. And I'm not even going to get into the big N's software prices for this argument. Oh, and don't worry, PC gaming, you're guilty too. GPU prices are rising while hard drive and RAM availability is scarce for the foreseeable future, which naturally sends prices skyward. No matter what screen you want to do your gaming on, it's making your wallet even lighter and lighter to do so, unless you're playing on your phone. Which brings me to my next question. Do game publishers and developers, and do we as gamers, really want the future of this medium to be Roblox on a smartphone or whatever the next user-generated content machine is? While Roblox has its place in the ecosystem, I'm pretty certain that publishers don't want it to become the only reliable way to bring in younger gamers, And I'm pretty sure players don't either. I sure as hell don't. It's mostly user-created slop that can be valuable, yes, as a learning tool for future professional game developers, but it's also not fit to be the default or standard in a world with a wider array of unique games from a wider variety of studios and artists. But that's the future we're staring down if the rest of gaming prices most people out.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Smartphones aren't exactly cheap themselves, but they are viewed as necessities far more than gaming consoles are, and thus parents are far more likely to purchase them. This isn't to condemn mobile gaming as an inherently bad thing, but if mobile becomes the only place that an increasing number of players can access games, that might spell doom for the market that relies and thrives on consoles and PCs. So what can we do about it? Well, unfortunately, the burden of responsibility falls with the platform holders. Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo need to find ways to make the cost of entry lower. Not necessarily on day one, but eventually. Can Nintendo put together a Switch 2 Lite that, say, shaves $100 off the price tag? Perhaps by shrinking the screen, removing the docking functionality that gives the device its name, and putting a smaller battery in it? That would go a long way towards getting more Nintendo Switch 2s into more people's hands. It'd be a good place to start, at least. As for Sony and Microsoft, it's trickier, as they are working with more powerful and thus more expensive hardware. What might end up happening is that the overlap between generations gets even longer, meaning if you were annoyed by how long it took Sony to leave the PS4 behind and start letting its developers set the PS5 as the minimum spec, then you might really not like where we're heading once the PS6 arrives. I can see a world where the PS5 essentially becomes the more affordable, there are those two words in air quotes again, PlayStation once the PS6 arrives, with most games supporting both the old and the new device for a majority of the generation. Same with Microsoft, who has already said that the next-gen Project Helix console PC gaming hybrid will be a, quote, very premium, very high-end experience. Translation, it's gonna be expensive. That might mean that the Series X kinda replaces the Series S as the entry point into the next Xbox generation, leaving Helix for the high rollers. If that's the future we're headed for in the console space, it's likely going to mean that overall technical advancement happens more slowly as older hardware has to be supported by developers for years longer than they otherwise would. Maybe it will anyway, on account of both Moore's Law and the ever more expensive pursuit of 4K 60 frames per second photorealistic graphics that's causing development budgets and timelines alike to continue to balloon to historic highs. But even if that's the case, it'd be less painful to arrive at that organically rather than higher console prices artificially pushing us to that point. My point is that no matter how all of this shakes out, the present we are living through right now, with higher hardware prices that, crucially, do not decrease over the course of a console generation, is going to lead to a future that could be catastrophic for the video game industry and the medium of gaming as we know it. I'm not gonna throw out any bombastic, "You thought the video game crash in the Atari days was bad, just you wait," hot take, because I don't think we're quite gonna end up in a post-apocalyptic scenario where gaming is just gone. But I do think we're heading for a future that none of us are going to like for this medium that we all love so dearly. I hope the console makers can look past the next fiscal quarter and see the potential long-term damage here before it's too late.
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
For more on the latest gaming hardware news, check out our weekly show, Next Gen Console Watch. New episodes drop every Friday on IGN.com and YouTube.com/IGN.